Lightning split the sky. The stink of brimstone rolled over the mountain peak and the surrounding forest as the purple-black night was torn asunder. The ground shook. Stones avalanched. Trees, mighty oaks that stretched gnarled branches towards the sky, cracked and splintered and died. The wind whipped the forest into a maelstrom of leaves and branches, acorns, berries and stones. Rain pelted. The ground turned to mud. Muna crouched low. Her robe was soaked, filthy, mud-stained. She tilted her head this way and that, listening, feeling, beyond the rain pouring down her face and the cold and dark and the violence of the storm. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Memories. Storms like this had been known before, were not uncommon. They were never nothing. And the dark was nothing to fear. The dark was to be enjoyed. The dark was her domain. Muna opened her eyes. Everything was tinged in purple and flickering white. Power flowed this way and that, but the storm was a distraction. The storm was a reaction, an overflow. She turned her head slowly. He stood in the clearing, as still as death, the eye of the storm. He could feel the ground far below his boots, could see the sky far above, buffeted and torn by the wind and rain, by the lightning. Powell smiled. Something moved, erratic, out of flow with the fear the storm was generating. And Powell moved, barely. The bear cub twitched and died, Powell's dagger in its eye. He breathed in. Fear, death, power. His lungs swelled. His chest swelled. The leather he wore creaked, stretched. He could smell them. Prey. He closed his eyes to see clearer. Prey. But a prey with power. He sensed them clearly. They were nothing. But the power they had, it was part of them. It was a power he could not take, could not separate them from it. But he could separate them from life, could pluck every black feather from their scrawny body, could shear the corvidae of life. Powell opened his eyes, frowning. They were human. Mostly human, anyway. But their spirit was black-feathered and winged. A piercing cry, a shriek beak, all-seeing black eyes. Powell loped towards them. Muna fled. She ran and the forest ran with her. Tree branches whipped up out of her way. Undergrowth cleared itself and reformed behind her. Tree roots buried themselves deep. Things unseen with too many eyes and too sharp teeth watched her run past, but readied themselves for the one following. As Muna ran, she caught the impression of wings trailing behind her, of air flowing across her beak, of black feathers torn loose and free, slipping behind her. She ran, knowing Sherewode was a place of mystery, of ancient things, ancient ways. Anything that distracted her was just a distraction. The one who followed... Muna shuddered. The one following... Ah! She crashed into a tree and spun, surprised, finding herself on the ground, staring up. The clearing was hard and dark, the ground dry. The air was still and silent. Fetid. Nothing moved. Nothing living breathed. A semicircle of trees facing a raw scar. A long barrow the sealed opening ripped asunder, the dark mouth of the cave Barrow breathing into the clearing. Muna stared. The dark breath of the earth rose all around her. Wisps of smoke, black and green. Wisps of fire. Wisps of feral energy. Powell grinned. The woman had sprawled on her back, helpless, mud-splattered. Fear always made them taste better. He sniffed, savouring her scent. Frowned. There was something else. He looked around cautiously. The woman was no threat. He had slaughtered whole clans of warriors before. A single woman, no weapons, was nothing. But there was something. He narrowed his gaze, sniffing. What he could smell wasn't her. She smelled of feathers. Corvidae. Some kind of power, but nothing to challenge him, nothing to stop him. Something connected to a god. A Norse god. He grinned. It would be a pleasure killing her, watching the light die in her eyes, watching whatever god it was gradually slip away from her. He moved round the semicircle of trees cautiously, watching her, eyes half closed. She remained sprawled on the ground, no threat, watching him. Her fear pinned her there. But there was something else. It wasn't the god that gave her its power, that used her as its spy, its agent, its weapon. Something disturbed. Something unleashed. Something... Muna watched Powell stalking her, forcing her heart to beat faster. The centre of the semicircle of trees, the desecrated barrow behind her. Whatever the creature was in the barrow, if the creature was in the barrow, the violence of its desecration, the violence of it being put into the barrow. She forced herself not to look up. She could see the power flickering around Powell, the hero light, twisted and malevolent. There was fear there. He could kill her in seconds, and there was nothing she could do about it. Nothing her brother could do about it. Nothing the other could do about it. She was afraid of him, but he was being cautious. Unusually cautious. She couldn't see the creature, the shade, whatever the barrow had released, but she knew it was out. There were no more wisps of smoke, no energy uncoiling out of the ground. Whatever it was out there. Muna blinked. It wasn't out there. It was... Powell crossed the ground in a second, his blade at the throat of the woman in white.
I have you.
He looked around cautiously, eyes narrowed. The cave was a yawning barrow mouth. The trees loomed. Ancient and dark, no sounds intruding into the clearing. He could see the sky far above, and the ground was dry. Everywhere else in the forest was soaked from the storm, but the ground was dry, the air was dry, the sound... There was no sound. Nothing. Keeping his blade at her throat, he drew another and pricked her belly with it.
What is this place? What is the creature I can sense?
She didn't answer. He pressed the blade in, watching the scarlet bloom on the white. He pushed harder, hearing and feeling and enjoying her gasp of pain.
I will kill you. I can smell your fear. Your little power. It is nothing to me, nothing to one Scathach trained. I can taste your death in the air.
He turned to look at her.
Where is it? What is it?
The woman in white smiled. Her eyes glittered black. Muna shrieked. The trees bowed before her, one torn up by its roots. Sound flooded in, the thunderous drumming of the rain, the cawing of corvidae, the rolling of brimstone thunder. Powell tumbled before her, and she stood up, unfurling her wings. He stared at her in horror. Muna flapped her wings.
You're not.
She shrieked with laughter. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled around the clearing. I am not what? Mortal. Powell got to his feet. His long, wet hair clung to his clothing. His face was gaunt, his eyes intense. Weapons bristled in his hands. Muna laughed, touched a hand to the wound, to the spreading redness on her dress, lifted her hand and flicked droplets of blood at him. Powell was drenched in a rain of blood. He staggered backwards, baring his teeth, growling, leering through the blood that coated his face.
I will.
Muna laughed. She felt the creature laughing through her. You will nothing, she cawed. She took a step towards the man, towards the lesser power, the one who thought they were everything when they were nothing. She tilted her head sidewards. The one they had mentioned, Scathach, was known to her. Scathach was gone, destroyed by what she had gloried in. Scathach had been far more than what she had taught. But what she had taught had killed her in the end. She smiled, taking a step closer. The man took a step back. The scent of Scathach, the spirit of Scathach, still lingered around the man, the supposed warrior, the one Scathach had trained, the one that had killed Scathach. She screamed in fury, and the living body, the living corpse she inhabited, spread arms, spread wings. The man stumbled back. They had killed her, driven her to the Barrow, tied her down, laid stones on her, and still living had sealed the Barrow. Death had been slow, hunger and worms. Her power had failed. The earth had not parted for her. The man had killed Scathach. The peasants had killed her. The one she inhabited, she herself was nothing more than a shade, than memory, than spirit. The one she inhabited, they were a thing living, a thing of power, a thing of memory. I am shade. I am shadow. I am witch. She screamed again, and the man fell back, weapons falling from his hands. She stalked forward, but movement was wing-spanned, wings not normally there, but wings ever present in spirit. I am spirit. I am witch. I am
Muna, daughter of Woden. I sit at his left shoulder. I am shield maiden, soldier, messenger, courier. I am Corvidae. I am not of you, Barrow being. Begone, misery crow, lest you test me.
Muna stood up straighter. Powell stared at her, fear on his face, a cunning look coming into his eyes as he studied her.
You're not her,
he breathed.
the creature.
I am Muna!
She screamed, cawing, and from the trees of the clearing birds took flight, ravens, crows, blackbirds, rooks, jackdaws, magpies and choughs. The air was filled with the shriek of their screams, a maliciously malevolent cacophony of crescendoing murder cries. The air was filled with feathers, the sky was black, and Powell cowered back.
I am Mona, I am Mary, I am living.
She stalked towards him, feathers in her hair, feathers in her face.
I am the left hand of Woden and thy seed, Powell, betrayer, kinslayer, I will flay you alive.
Powell scrambled to his feet. Moona, one of the hooded, stood before him, but a Moona the unlike of which he had seen before. Wings faded in and out of existence from her back. Wings of white, wings of black, wings of the darkest forest, wings of the fieriest hell. They called her the Lady in White, some of the peasants, but if they saw her now, white dress stained with blood and feathers, wings coalescing and vanishing from her back, whirling black eyes, the beak of a raven that came and went, she dribbled and spat, cawing, fury in her eyes. And cloaked in the spirit of a Barrow creature, an infestation, a witch buried alive. Powell leered.
Lady Moona.
He half inclined his head, not taking his eyes from her.
Barrow witch, your fight is not with me, but with each other.
Ænglish Vale had been simple compared to Sherewode. The ancient forest was thick with shades, spirits, memories of grief and rage and hatred, memories made manifest. He bowed mockingly to the shade.
You are welcome to Woden's storm crow, Barrow hag. She may best even you.
She watched the man depart. She lunged after him, but the body did not move. The body of the winged woman, the raven child, held itself fast. "Mona!" she raged. "He escapes! They buried me alive! Let me take him!"
You live through me.
Moona spoke, her voice in her head and in the clearing.
I am memory. I hold you.
They buried me alive!
She screamed to the forest, to the clearing, to the torn barrow.
You are free. Without me, you are nothing.
I am nothing!
She screamed.
I was their wise woman, their healer. I held the village together. They turned on me.
Listen, Barrow child. Power is gathering. Woden watches. Ulla stalks the forest. Cairn rises. A wild power, a feral stag, a hell creature.
Those that slew you are long dead. Their descendants fall under the weaving of the brothers of the Christ of the East. Norman kills Anglo-Saxon. Norse hunt Celt. The forest, the world tears itself apart.
And you?
The Barrow witch asked. Moona let herself breathe slowly.
I am hooded. We come from the dark. We are the dark. We are men. We are God. We are legend.
She could feel the shade of the witch thinking, could feel the ancient crone's thoughts tumbling and reassembling.
You are powerful. I am wise. But you have a god's touch.
I am Moona.
She spoke simply.
I am the eyes of Woden. I am hooded. I am...
We are Moona. We are the eyes of Woden and the memory of the forest. We are hooded.
Muna closed her eyes, smiled, bared her teeth and laughed.
We are Muna. We are the eyes of Woden and the memory of the forest. We are